This is going to be an exciting conversation for a lot of good reasons. All the way from LA to Baruch. Are you in Tel Aviv? I can't remember.
Yeah, right outside of Tel Aviv, Bat Yam.
Bat Yam, cool. Well, shalom, welcome, and to the Leaders Who Care series. This is a great story, and I'm super proud to be able to share it out there. But I want to ask you: do you prefer Baruch or do you prefer Bucky?
I prefer Bucky. It's the name that I got when I was 10 years old and been going by that ever since.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna skip to one question really quick then. How did you get the name Bucky in the first place?
That's a great question. When I was 10 years old, I went over to my neighbor's house, I think for Shabbat for lunch perhaps, and their grandfather was pretty old and he didn't have great hearing. And he was like, "What was your name?" And I was like, "Baruch," because that is my name. And then he was like, "What? Buck?" And Buck became Bucky, and then it just kind of stuck from there. And that's how it's been ever since.
Right, things happen for a reason.
This
The
is true.
buck stops here, all that stuff, right?
Yeah, taking some inspiration, that's for sure.
So with that, share a little bit about who you are. We'll get into what you're doing and whatnot in a minute, but share a little bit about where you're from originally, where you are now, family, something you've never told anybody ever you want to tell the world now. That's cool too. Stuff like that.
I was born in Baltimore, lived there till I was about 14 years old. And at the time, it was the summer. I didn't have a school to go to for high school. And my parents came up to me and they were like, "How do you feel about Israel?" And I was kind of like, "What?" And they were like, "Well, we're going in 2 weeks." I'm the youngest of four. Three were already out of the house. And they were like, "Worst comes to worst, we mess up one of them." Still not bad numbers. So we moved to Israel about a month later. And 2 weeks after that, I started high school at a school called YTA, which was for American Israelis integrate into the culture, learn the language, all of that stuff. And that's where I spent my high school.
I love that. How do you feel about Israel? By the way, we're leaving in 2 weeks.
That was it was a bit of a traumatic experience. I'd say at the time, especially it's very hard to move to a new culture, new language at the age of 14. But when I look back at those years, I think it was incredibly formative and it was incredibly difficult. And I'm super happy it was because I think that developed me into exactly who I am today.
Yeah, sometimes parents have to make difficult decisions that we don't understand as kids, but they you know, sometimes parents know more than maybe the kid knows at the time.
This is definitely true, and that holds true to today for my parents. I guarantee that.
No, that's cool. Well, going back to when you were a kid as a teenager, then at 14, moving, but even before 14, what were you like as a kid? Were you the lemonade stand guy? Were you watching movies, sports, music?
I love sports, particularly baseball. I played pitcher, my favorite
Oh.
position, especially because in baseball, pitcher does everything and nobody does anything else.
No.
So that was always an enjoyable experience. And I was never really great with education, I'd say. I got kicked out of one school in 5th grade, got kicked out of another school in 6th grade, spent half a year in school in 7th grade, and then didn't go to school for 8th grade.
Well, you are consistent.
Yes, that was the one thing happening throughout the time. And maybe now that I think about it, part of the reason we ended up in Israel might have had something to do with it.
Well, you weren't deported, were you?
Not that they've told me, but you never know.
So did you played baseball? Any music, any other things you were involved in?
I played baseball a lot. I also played football. This is when I was younger. I played for Baltimore's travel team. And then when we moved to Israel, I got way more into American football. There's a tackle football league here. A lot of people probably don't know that. Played in that league and played a lot of flag football. Israel is hoping to have a flag football representation in 2028.
Cool.
I'm a bit too old for that at that point, but it will be a big moment for our country.
You could coach.
Coach, maybe if I find the time.
Exactly. It's interesting because the former Montreal Canadian hockey coach for the pros in the NHL actually coached the Israeli ice hockey team for a while.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't even know Israel has an ice hockey team.
See, there you go. That's why you do these things.
Yeah.
You live and learn.
Live and learn.
Tell us about, starting your journey, if you will, starting with, you got your bachelor's in business degree, and then you went into a bunch of diverse experiences where you were in donor recruitment, donor retention, bioinformatics, which I'd like to learn more about, and recently even analytics with an amazing organization, the Gift of Love Registry in the marrow donor world, if I can put it that way. How
Yes.
did that journey happen? What intrigued you to take that path?
So like a lot of things that have happened in my life, and I think life in general, is you don't really know where things are going to lead you, and you don't control that much of what happens to you. And for me, when I was in high school, I was always very much a people's person. I like to be with people. I like to talk to people. And it was hard because my Hebrew wasn't that good at all. And,
Mm.
speaking English naturally was a lot easier. And I got the opportunity to volunteer to speak to birthright groups. So groups who come to Israel to learn about Israel on a 10-day trip and explain to them what Gift of Life is, what a bone marrow registry is, and how if they registered and signed up, they could one day save a life. And I went to do it, and I got to talk to people, and it was presenting and it was developing skills and all of that. But also, a couple months after I did my first presentation there, I got an email that said someone that I had helped sign up went on to save, a life of a 70-year-old man with leukemia. And, that to me was just like, wow, that's impact, that really
Yeah.
had an effect on me. And I was like, I want to do this. And really from that point on, I volunteered for them as much as possible throughout high school. I think I've spoken to maybe 40, 50,000 birthright participants at this point.
Wow.
I helped sign up over 10,000 people at that time. And then eventually they hired me to, manage one of their programs in Israel. But kind of my interests were always in economics, behavioral economics, and then going into data analytics, data science. And when I was studying for my undergrad, my bachelor's, I became a research assistant, started studying customer churn for telecom companies, which is an amazing concept, but an incredibly boring industry. And then basically I went to Gift of Life and I said, listen, there are some really incredible concepts here that we could apply to donors that might help save more lives, and kind of brought the two of those together, and then ended up building that entire process out at the Gift of Life Registry.
Yeah, that is true impact. I can't even imagine the feeling of knowing someone that did that, and the life saved, and having that person be appreciative. I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah. No, it's shout out to Gift of Life, an incredible organization, incredible people. Jay Feinberg, their CEO who founded it, still running it to this day, and they save lives. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, you can't do more than that. I think. How did then it come about to be where you are, what you're doing currently right now, to be the CEO of Soldiers Save Lives? How did that happen?
Well, none of it really, was planned, as a lot of things were, especially I think in the post October 7th reality. And my life was completely different on October 6th, and I never saw any of this coming.
Right.
My roommate, his name was David Newman. He asked to borrow my car on October 6th to go to a party. So I said, of course, just drop me off at my parents' house in Jerusalem. It was Shabbat. I had family visiting from the States. So we drove to Jerusalem together. He dropped me off at my parents' house. And basically I got out of the car and I said, I love you. I'll see you tomorrow. There was going to be a Bruno Mars concert on October 7th. So if I just say there never was. And I spent Shabbat with my family, and I woke up Shabbat morning, early in the morning, to the sound of sirens, like 7 a.m. And I immediately texted David and I just wrote to him, I hope you're up north. And David responded, pray for me. And this was earlier enough in the morning that I really didn't understand what was going on or what was happening. And I just kind of said to him, like, what do you mean pray for you? Like, it's just rockets, you'll be fine. And then he basically said, pray for me now. I'm hiding with my girlfriend and a bunch of other people in a dumpster. And I was kind of in shock, but I was just like, David, we're praying for you. We love you. We're coming for you. And I have two friends, Gidon and Ezra, who are combat medics in the army. And I took my sister's car, certainly didn't tell her what we were doing with it. We stopped to go donate blood, and we started driving down south around 11 a.m. on October 7th. And the roads were completely empty, and I'm texting back and forth with David, but barely getting any information. And we're thinking to ourselves, maybe there are 20 terrorists in the country, 30 terrorists in the country. It was impossible to fathom what was really going on that day. And we reached Sderot, which is a city down south, very close to the Gaza border. And over there was a roadblock up, and they literally said, you can't go past here. This is a war zone. But Gidon, Ezra, the two of them, frankly, heroes, saved a lot of lives that day. They got out of the car, they hopped in an ambulance, and they started driving down 232. And within minutes, they start finding bodies and injured people. And they spent that entire day treating people along the road. Meanwhile, I'm right outside over there going back and forth with David's family, trying to get information from them, trying to get information from David, anything. And I got one last text message from him, which just said, "Pray for me now." And that was the last text message I got from David. And Saturday was complete chaos. It's really hard to describe what it was like, what those scenes were like. But we came home on Saturday night, and we still didn't know if David was alive or dead, if Noam, his girlfriend, was alive or dead. And I think people in the country, and it's hard to look back and remember this, but nobody really understood the depth of what just happened. And people asked, what's going on? And we just said thousands are dead. Like, we didn't know how to describe it. This is a war. And people are like, what do you mean? And we woke up Sunday morning still not knowing, but just that feeling of we need to do something, anything. And at this point, we got some troubling information, to say the least, saying that David might have been killed. And we drove back down south again, and we drove to a hospital in Ashkelon, which is very close to the Gaza region as well. And we drove to the hospital, and I remember this, there was a huge amount of rocket attacks on October 7th. There are cars that had been blown up. There was literally a hole in the hospital as we're walking through. And we went to the morgue, and there was a truck, a freezer truck, and it was full of bodies, but there was no David. And we just kind of got this sense that, like, we have to just continue going, and we did. And we went back to the same point we were the day before by State Road. And still, October 8th, roadblock up saying, this is a war zone, you cannot go past here. But it is Israel, so we made a left and a right, and we went around. And we're driving down this road called 232, which runs parallel to Gaza. And as we're driving down this road, it's getting quieter and quieter, and nobody really around, and kind of everything that's happening over there, you're still seeing scenes of destruction all over the place. And I turned around the corner in the car, and there was a vehicle that was in front of me, and it was just hit by a rocket or a mortar. I'm not really sure what it was. I've never experienced anything like that in my life, and I freaked out. I was terrified, and I kind of just drove right by it. And it became apparently clear to me that if we continued down this road, we were going to die. David was dead, and this was not worth it. And we drove home, and we got home on Sunday night. And about 2 hours after I got home, somebody sent a picture on WhatsApp, and we're looking at this picture, and it's a field. And I think what we're seeing there is a pile of bodies, and we're able to zoom in, and eventually we're able to identify David based off of the shirt that I lent him to the party. So that painted, to say the least, my experience of Saturday, Sunday, October 7th, October 8th. And I'm going to be honest with you, I have no relevant skills for a war, truly. I don't know how to fight. I don't know how to shoot. I'm not very helpful. I was just driving, and I felt extremely useless. And I was just kind of sitting there in this apartment, and it was just running through my head, what do I do? My friend, my best friend, was just murdered. I met David the first day of 9th grade. My country's under attack. I was 25 years old at the time. All of my friends are being called up, and they don't have what they need. And it was just like, we need to do something. And I ended up staying up that entire night, writing up some documents saying, we're going to start helping people. We're going to bring in aid from America. I opened up a WhatsApp group called Let's Do Something, put some of my best friends in it, put some of David's best friends in it. And the next morning we met up, and we just got to work. Started calling every single person I've ever known or ever could known for connections. Took my friend's house, Ike, my co-founder in Long Island, turned his mother's home into a warehouse, sent out Excel spreadsheet list of all the items we needed. And before we knew it, we had lines down the road, street was blocked, people were dropping things off. We had to coordinate everything, color coded, and by some miracle, we got 20,000 pounds of aid on a plane that night. And it arrived Tuesday, 7 p.m. at the exact same time as David's funeral. And that was where we had this moment of like, what do we do? Do we go to his funeral? Do we go deal with his flight? And we're like, we have to go to his funeral. We can't miss that. And we did that. And that's really what kicked off the whole thing. The flight ended up getting released on Friday night. about midnight. It was this insane experience. I'm on the phone with the Ministry of Defense. It's about 2 a.m. and I'm like, our flight was released from customs. As I'm sure you've probably heard over the last 9 months, customs is one of the scariest things there is in Israel. And he's just like, he woke up. I called him, I woke him up. He's just like, no, it's impossible. And we're like, well, they told us. And we drive in and we get there, and there are just pallets and pallets of aid everywhere. And we don't have a truck or anything like that. And again, we just reach out to people, connect to people. Someone pulled up with a couple moving trucks. We sent that to a warehouse in Petah Tikva that was at the time abandoned, converted that into our warehouse. And the whole thing just kind of built and built from that moment.
You know, it's there's a thread here. You said you were a pitcher because the pitcher has to do everything. And then your parents said, how do you feel about Israel? And before you can answer, well, we're leaving in 2 weeks, to
Yeah.
this, where they could just change like that. It's kind of fascinating how sometimes these points tie together in a way to prepare you for something
Yeah.
you never even thought you'd be prepared for. Share with us how maybe some of your experiences, with the Marrow sector, if you will, with moving to Israel, how some of your previous experiences maybe, without you even knowing, prepared you for this.
Yeah. I mean, looking back at it, I think every single one of those experiences was something I needed to help me at this point. And I'm not a big man of faith in general. But there is definitely something to that. And from my childhood and coming to Israel and just growing up in Israel, I think there's a level of grit and resilience that Israelis build. And I don't think I'll ever have it quite to their level. But I think if I would have grown up in America, in Baltimore, in a very different environment, I just wouldn't have that mentality. I think Israelis are people of action, and Israelis are people who get stuff done. And I think I learned from that over time. And I was incredibly lucky to be put in an experience and a position where I worked in nonprofit management for 7 years. That's what I did. So I started to think in that way. I started to think when it comes to partners, when it comes to fundraising, when it comes to connecting to people, when it comes to building and leading a team, exactly how to do that.
Right.
And all the kind of things that come with it, from literally just getting people to your side, motivated to do work to help you out so it could help them out, and all the parts of that really painted my entire experience. And I think my management time at Gift of Life gave me the ability to be able to do this.
Yeah, and I'm not religious either. I guess I'd say it's the typical word would be spiritual too, but I have been to
Yeah.
Israel. My kids have done birthright. Um, there's something about, I mean, you can't, people say, oh, I can imagine how you feel. They mean it sincerely, but you can never imagine really how it feels like when you went through the war zone there. You could never imagine it. And there's something to be said for people starting to look at things through other people's eyes, or the infamous statement about putting yourself in someone else's shoes before
Yeah.
either judging or even trying to think you can imagine. And you had to get in those shoes pretty fast, October
Yeah.
8th, if you will. But going back to your experiences before that maybe helped you with that, and how hard that must have been. I can't even imagine identifying him through the shirt that you lent him for that.
He didn't ask to borrow the shirt. He didn't. But
He just took it.
he just took it. He just took it. I was like, Dave, you got to borrow the shirt.
Well, that
But that very much kind of, painted our relationship. And I think a lot of this is, besides for the professional experience, the group that we were. It wasn't just me. I arrived at a high school with a lot of other people who just moved from America. And because of that, we're all going through the same experiences. And we came so much more than just friends. We became family. After high school, David and I traveled together to Mexico. I lived with a bunch of my friends. David was living with me before the war. And that was really who we are. And those same bonds and connections and relationships that we had those years is also what brought us together. Because no matter how much skill or capability I have, the fact that I had people around me who were just said, I'll throw everything in my life on hold, on the side, we're fully committed and dedicated to doing this together, is really what made it possible.
Yeah, well, we work a lot in the realm of organizations, whether they're for profit or what I call social profit. I don't like the word nonprofit.
Yeah.
Whatever they're doing, that I think we've learned, and we follow what we call Leaders Who Care. That's the point of this series, is that people see their organizations always seem to do better. Their life even does better when they're doing good at the same time and not just about making money. Can you describe the overall mission of Soldiers Save Lives, like now and in a way where it's going to develop to go to at one point, hopefully this war will end.
Yes.
Where do you see it? Where do you see it right now, the mission, and where do you see it going?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Actually, we're currently in the midst of a rebrand. We're relaunching the organization as Let's Do Something in memory of David Newman tomorrow. And that's kind of to expand on the current mission, because when we started this, it was completely a reaction. I didn't have a single thought about building an organization or doing this in the long term. I loved what I was doing for Gift of Life. It was my dream job. It was everything I've ever wanted. And it was just something out of need. And after about 6 months of reacting, which was just bringing in aid, connecting with people, getting soldiers what they needed. You know, there are over 100,000 displaced civilians, getting them what they needed. We kind of sat down and we're like, do we need to be doing this? Does this need to happen? Because in the end of the day, without that, there's no need. And if there's no need, there's no purpose in existing. And we sat there for a while and just kind of looked at what's going on and what happened in Israel. And I think a lot of us noticed this also. It wasn't just that date. You know, I think looking back at the history books, this is going to be a historical moment for Israel, geopolitically, culturally,
Right.
on the PR front. Everything has changed. And we kind of sat down there for a long time. We said to ourselves, where can we help, if anywhere? And who will that be? And can we do that? And that's kind of how we painted who we are and built out a plan for what we're going to be over the next 18 months. And why we also came to the name Let's Do Something. In the end of the day, that was the name of the WhatsApp group that I opened. So it has a huge amount of meaning, but also it's the call to action behind that was so important for us. Let's Do Something is all of us. It's not just me. It's not just you, Mark. It's everyone out there, because truly everyone can have an impact. I had no special, you know, or crazy expertise or wealth or anything like that coming into this. It was my will and desire to help. And I've seen so many people with that same will and desire do such incredible work. And when it comes to that, we built our mission to run on 3 pillars and 3 main areas: in defense, in healing, and in advocacy. And we came to those 3 because in the end of the day, the reality of Israel's defense apparatus after October 7th is we thought we were a lot safer than we were. And in the beginning of the war, it was learning that, you know, there were basics missing. But once you've gotten as ingrained and in depth into the IDF and speaking to all these people and learning everything that's going on over there, you see kind of structural things that could be improved. And that's really where we started investing our time, our money, and our effort when it comes to defense. And that's working on directly with IDF units and other partners to, number one, build out our drone defense capabilities. I'm sure, as many others, we've all seen what's going on in Ukraine and how in the 21st century warfare is changing completely.
Yep.
Just as in the 20th century when they rolled out the machine gun and, you know, the French went marching in and thousands were killed because they didn't understand when technology changes and warfare changes, everything changes on the battlefield. So try to really harness that and build the capabilities out faster for the IDF to leverage the abilities of drones, to train units on how to use them. So instead of a soldier going in and checking if there's a terrorist or a bomb threat or a booby trap in a building, every single unit should have someone who's trained with the capabilities to do that. And we've made that our goal in defense as one part. And the second side of that is R&D and development, to continue building out those skills to not just be ready for warfare of today, but warfare of tomorrow. We're dealing with Gaza and Hamas, of course, but we're also dealing with Hezbollah, which is a proxy of Iran, the Houthis, which is a proxy of Iran, and an ongoing geopolitically unstable situation for Israel, where we need to build things out and develop. That's one. And when it comes to health, this is incredibly personal to me. David was killed. David, frankly, died a hero. He was protecting his girlfriend. He was protecting other people over there. And his girlfriend, Noam, survived, but she was shot in the hip. She was stuck for hours before she was rescued. And I've seen firsthand how she's going through the recovery process and what's available to Israelis and what isn't these days. And a huge part of what we've seen is tons and tons of these people are leaving the country. There's a lot of clinical backing to say that there simply is very hard to respond to trauma in the place that you are, in the place that you went through trauma, when there's an ongoing battle. Just yesterday, 2 people were killed up north. We have rockets still firing, can't fully recover there. And because of that, over 100,000 Israelis have left to Thailand, in particular, to kind of just relax and recover and be there. Huge amount of people survived Nova. And of course, there are hundreds of thousands of Israeli soldiers, reserve soldiers, who are getting out and going in and want to go away in the meantime. Right. And what we noticed is that there is nothing there. There's no support there for them. If you're in physical danger, you might go to the embassy. If you need spiritual help, you might go to a Chabad house. But if you need emotional support, there's just nothing there right now. We need that for our future. So we partnered up with a professor from the University of Haifa, and we're working on building out a center, healing center in Thailand that will take care of these people. That is one side of it. And the second side of that is there are still 100,000 displaced people in Israel. Unfortunately, to this point, Hezbollah has essentially had a victory over there. They have cleared us out of a big part of the north. That's the reality. And these people are feeling the effects of that every single day. They're living in hotel rooms as a whole family for 9 months, and it's not easy. And what we've seen is these people just aren't getting enough attention. So when it comes to aid and caring for them, we've really adopted them over there, and we're making sure that they have events going on all the time where they could get whatever they need to make sure the parents could have a day off, can relax, the children could be cared for, and of course, all their aid needs. They've been through a lot financially because of all of this. That's taken care of as well. So when it comes to defense and healing, that's where we're working. And our last pillar is advocacy. Advocacy, I think a lot of us could agree, is the most important part of all of this. We've been completely shocked by what's happened since October 7th. There were pro-Palestinian protests on October 7th, let alone what's happened since. And all of us have been absolutely in an outrage of what's going on, but nobody's really sure what to do. And Israel, in a lot of ways, has lost that battle as well. And for us as young mid-20s, we see how Israel is being represented. We're not cool, we're not interesting, and I understand why we're losing. It's hard to fight against TikTok and everything that's going on and what they're showing in Gaza. So we decided to fight that battle in a different way, kind of from the philosophy, if they don't care, they won't listen, and just working on making a huge amount of humanizing content that young Americans can connect to, specifically the demographic 18 to 29 years old. Those people support Israel less and less every single day than any generation before them. They're going to be our future lawmakers, future voters, and all that. And we need to make sure those people are on our side. And just like with the Thailand and Healing Clinic, meeting people where they are, where people is social media. And we've decided to meet them there, work on that, and use that as a funnel to engage people and bring them in for events that empower American Jews in the US, and also on fellowship programs that could help people learn how to fight that battle as well, learn about Israel, and just become a positive force for our people, because that's what we need.
Yeah, that's amazing. You actually made it easy for me, because you talked about tech with drones and everything else that I was some I was going to ask, and I was going to we're in a different time now, even tech wise. The fourth industrial revolution is about tech and AI and everything, and the fifth is really about humanity now and how we're going to handle it. And combine that with mental health, which is a huge area that we work in. You hit it right on the money. It's funny how who would have thought Thailand would be the place to go, but you're right. What can I'll come back to mental health for a second. We work with organizations like Trauma Free World, and a lot of work in mental health, and also another program that was founded by a man a good friend of mine in Montreal, and a psychologist in Israel, called Nonflict, which is how to look at conflict differently and listen to each other. So there may be things we can support you on and in that realm, and just everybody listening here, what can people do in general to potentially help your organization?
I think there are 2 things. There's the easy thing and there's the harder thing. When it comes down to it, in the end of the day, the simplest thing is what makes all of this go on every single day is donations and fundraising. That's what makes all of this possible. Like you said, a social profit. The goal there is not to make money, so the money has to come from somewhere. And thank God we have seen thousands and thousands of people come together to support us, to make this mission happen, to make this possible. And we still need people, because obviously as the war has developed, people have gotten more tired of donating, as you understand and as it is. But the reality is the battle has really only started. when it comes to mental health and when it comes to advocacy, it's just the beginning.
Yeah.
And we need the support of the US. That's how the relationship has been for a long time, and that's how it will continue to be. And that's incredibly important. The second side of this is people. Like you said, that's the fifth revolution. And I've seen so much of that. I would not have been able to build this organization myself. And there are, countless and countless examples of people who did not know me who reached out to me and said, hey, I think I could help over here with legal. I think I could help over there, with trade. I think I could help over here with this and with that, and experiences, and people have different backgrounds actually coming together to say, how can I help build this out? Where can I come in? And people like that have taken this from something that just started in an apartment to a organization that is really having real impact in the world.
Yeah, no, so dollars and people. What else
Dollars
is
and
new?
people.
That's what you need. So we'll put it out
Yeah.
there, and you have a website. Is it still share your website?
Yeah, the website is soldiersavelives.org. And we're going to be redirecting and switching over everything tomorrow to Let's Do Something. So all the more reason to check out the website today. And then tomorrow, the rebrand and the new website will be up, more detailing the kind of 3 programs that we laid out and talked about today.
Awesome. There's an interesting thing going on around the world too, and here in the States also, where it's called You Are Enough, where people get lonely, depressed, and whatnot, that they didn't become Oprah Winfrey, or they didn't become a pro athlete, or they didn't become whatever, and they like failed. Let's Do Something is perfect for that, because no matter how small it is, it's still big anyways.
Yeah.
And you don't do nothing because you can't be the biggest, you can't save the world type of thing. That's kind of what you're talking about, right?
100%. And I think if I would have sat there after David was killed and would have said to myself, I need to get an airplane over to Israel, it's impossible. That's the end of the day. But in the end of the day, problems and solutions, you break those down into individual components and people coming together. And really with that, when you have those 2 things, you have people who are there to help, people are there to support, and you're willing to work through it and do the hard work and get it done, you could complete incredible things. You could do amazing things. And it really is anyone from any background who could do that.
Exactly. And you don't have religious or spiritual, something happens when that commitment and intent is there. So last question on this, because in LA they always say, or we always say, leave them wanting more so you can do a sequel. So we may have to do a sequel here, but and it's kind of an interesting question based on what you're doing, but with everything that's gone on, and not to mention COVID, that seems like that was yesterday and years ago also, all that was happening. What are you most grateful for, and what are you most hopeful for?
Wow. I think I'm most grateful for that I got this opportunity to help and give back. When you go through traumatic experiences as a country, and for me as an individual, when I talk about healing and all of that, that's something I've experienced firsthand as well. To be able to actually help people and give back is not so easy, and it's not an opportunity that everyone gets. And I'm thankful that I was put in that position, because I may not have been. It wasn't just me, and there are 1,000 people who supported me in getting there. And really that I could keep David's name alive every single day throughout good work by helping people is amazing. And it feels so, so good. And really every single day I wake up incredibly appreciative for that opportunity.
Yeah, and that's great. And that's obviously honoring him, and where he didn't pass away in vain, as they would say. But it really meant something. What are you most hopeful for?
I'm hopeful for the world and humanity. Honestly, when I think about it, David was this guy, he represented the best in all of us. Simply put, he was a better guy than I will ever be. He looked at life simply. When sunset happened, which, as you know, it happens every single day, he got incredibly excited. He freaked out. He lost it. It was a beautiful thing, and he took the time to appreciate that. And those are the lessons that I try to take from David every single day, and that I try to imbue in the relationships that I have with people. Because in the end of the day, there are a lot of bad people out there in the world. We've seen what October 7th shows in some of humanity, but there are a lot of good people out there as well. And I could focus on all the bad that is happening, but also I could focus on all the good people out there. And really, that's what I see for the future and for people. Humanity has what it takes. We're fighting our demons. We don't always win, but we can overcome, and there is so much good inside each and every one of us.
Yeah, well said. That's the way we have to go. Well, I'm grateful that you actually had been already a leader who cares, but you really showed it, with this, and hopeful because of that as well. Thanks for what you do, and thanks for sharing it.
Mark, thank you so much for having me today. It's an honor. It's a pleasure to share with everyone.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.